So, Saagar, what's on your radar?
Well, the ongoing congressional fight of what exactly to do for working people most affected by the coronavirus has revealed just how much Democrats have become the party of corporations, the rich, and the suburbs, while the American right is worming its way out of its corporate shell to become the party of the American working class and of families. You saw this truly burst onto the stage Tuesday afternoon when Senator Mitt Romney endorsed the idea of giving $1,000 immediately to every single American. Tom Cotton jumped on board, saying that the current legislation passed by the House of Representatives fell short of getting cash into American families' hands as quickly as they need it. Senator Josh Hawley, he went even further, saying that every single parent in this country should receive the monthly equivalent of the IRS average expenditure by family until this economic crisis is over. But let's not even stop there. Things got even more extraordinary. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin, whose background and past work on the GOP tax bill has troubled me deeply, somehow made an about-face from the White House podium and had this to say.
Although the president likes the idea of the payroll tax holiday, I will tell you what we've heard from many people, and the president has said we can consider this. The payroll tax holiday would get people money over the next 6 to 8 months. We're looking at sending checks to Americans immediately. And what we've heard from hardworking Americans, many companies have now shut down, whether it's bars or restaurants. Americans need cash now, and the president wants to get cash now. And I mean now, in the next 2 weeks.
How much?
I will be previewing that with the Republicans. There's some numbers out there. They may be a little bit bigger than what's in the press.
That's right, folks. The Trump White House and GOP senators are currently working harder to get money in the hands of working people in this country than corporate-dominated Democratic leadership and their own Democratic colleagues. Nancy Pelosi's contribution to the discourse so far is wrangling support for a fake paid sick leave bill, which exempts corporations with over 500 employees, aka the companies most people work for, are not liable for paying sick leaves to their employees under this legislation. So let's check in on the Democratic senators. Well, former presidential contender and leading contender for running mate to Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, tweeted that she wants to give $500 a month to working families. Yes, you heard that right. And as left economics want, Matt Brunig points out, quote, Kamala's $500 a month proposal is for a married couple. For a single person, it's $250. It's not half of what Republicans are proposing. It's 1/4 of what they are proposing, and it excludes the poor. That is all of one the so-called future leaders of the Democratic Party could muster. As for Joe Biden, I went to his website. All he's been talking about is paid sick leave. We're way beyond doing anything about that right now. A new NPR Marist poll says that 20% of American households have already experienced reduced hours or have been laid off from their jobs. For those who have been laid off, all the paid sick leave and payroll tax cut in the world is not going to do anything for you. The magnitude of the crisis that we are in right now is stark. Yesterday, Bloomberg News reported that Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin told senators that if aggressive action is not taken, that the unemployment rate in this country could hit 20%. And to put it into context, we have not seen an unemployment rate like that since the 1920s and 30s during the Great Depression, when in 1933, at its worst, the unemployment rate was at 24.6%. The actions that are required of us right now are so many orders of magnitude higher than what Joe Biden or Kamala Harris or Nancy Pelosi is even considering. The only people in the political discourse right now who are actually trying to use this moment to try to save America's working class as a result of this crisis are the presidential candidate Bernie Sanders and a bunch of GOP senators. And guess what? Only one of those groups actually has a future path to power in their party in the coming years. The Democratic Party turned on Sanders. The establishment decided to basically kill him at the very last chance and put the reins of power back into the hands of people who ruined this country during the last economic catastrophe. And the populist right is now in the driver's seat, trying to save the American working class. The only thing that I pray is that the Republican establishment doesn't do to them what they did to Sanders.
I mean, at least Saagar Republicans were smart enough to listen to the economic populists. It's not like there are that many in the Republican Party,
No.
but at least they're freaking smart enough to listen to them right now. I mean, you contrast that to the fact that the bill that passed out of the Democrat House, 20% of workers, pathetic, paid sick leave, and a massive loophole for corporations with more than 500 people. I mean, it's just like, it's insane. And it completely reveals the lack of any sort of ideas or creative thinking or independent thinking in the Democratic establishment. That's what it really is. And yes, Bernie Sanders is out front saying, let's do $2,000 a month. Let's do mortgage forbearance. Let's end foreclosures. Let's end evictions, all of that. But they're not listening to him.
They're not, Crystal.
Emphatically rejected him.
That's the craziest part. Right as we started this show, I see breaking news from Bloomberg News that the president told his advisors that $800 billion was not enough of an economic stimulus, that we needed $1 trillion. I mean, it took Mitt Romney, it took Josh Hawley and these other, and Marco Rubio and Tom Cotton to put forward presentations to the president to immediately get the Treasury Secretary, who used to work for Goldman Sachs, to come out and say, we need to get checks in Americans' hands within the next 2 weeks. I mean, they've essentially completely outflanked the House Democrats in this position. And that is it's just so stark to see that the actual power within the GOP at this moment. Now, look, I have criticized it as much as possible. I still think the greatest fight of our lifetime will not necessarily be this one. It will be on the corporate side and about all of the conditions that need to be attached whenever Boeing and all these other people, if they want checks, they're going to have to significantly change the way that they do business. That fight aside, I'm not exactly hopeful for how that one will play out. But I think that this one reveals about who has the power in the party and who doesn't. Because as you say, Sanders is out there with very similar proposals, but they're not even listening. He's not part of the discussion. He's not on the phone with Nancy Pelosi feeding these positions. Because look, the White House is just trying to get their pulse on the finger of what the GOP will do or not. So it's important that the people who can set the litmus test have the access to that conduit of power and actually get this type of legislation passed. That is what we are seeing right now. And it is a dynamic in American politics which changed within a week. I mean, 1 week ago, could you imagine any of these positions having any sort of primacy in the GOP? It would never happen. Or, I mean, even you would think that Nancy Pelosi and others, I guess not, but would not be so obtuse as to pass one of the most K Street corporate lobbyist bills in history in the time of a modern crisis. So that's where we are right now. And it's just crazy, the fact that they have learned nothing from the fact that they just had an insurgent economic populist almost win the Democratic nomination, and would have won if they had not all coalesced at the last possible moment in order to kill his candidacy.
And not only that, but if he had played his cards a little differently, he would have won. I mean, it was all there for them, truly. On the other hand, I don't want to give the Trump administration and the Republicans too much credit, because the other thing that Mnuchin is saying is, we might be able to get those checks out by the end of April. The end of April. Okay, people have car notes and rent payments and mortgage payments coming up in days, weeks. I mean, that's the time frame we're talking about. And honestly, look, if we're looking at potentially 20% unemployment rate, which is just like not anything close to what we've seen in our lifetimes, what anyone has seen in generations, $1 trillion is not going to be enough. I mean, they need to be thinking. I couldn't
agree more with you.
Thinking down the road, they need to be thinking about monthly payments until we get through this crisis. They need to be thinking about debt forbearance. I mean, there is a lot more that needs to be done here. Your stands. The contrast between Kamala offering $250 versus Mitt Romney.
Yeah. Yes. Four times more. Yeah.
What land am I living in? But that's what happens when you have a Democratic establishment that is captured by affluent suburbanites. And as we talked about yesterday, what do they want? All they want is to do enough to be able to get back to brunch. They don't care about the underlying issue. Yes. They don't really care about what's going on for their working class brothers and sisters. They want to do enough so that they feel like they did something, and they have to calibrate it perfectly, right? So that things can just get back to normal as soon as possible. So they're not interested in this more broad scale structural change. And the danger is that people realize that you know what? The government actually could do things to help me in my life. They realize that the government could have a role in securing them economic rights. That's the danger here. And so no one wants to go too far and show just how much the government could actually be doing for you, not just in a crisis, but on a daily basis.
Yeah, and I think that shattering of the Overton window on the right, first with the election of Donald Trump, and now with this crisis, presents a big opportunity. And I do think you're right, by the way. If it takes until the end of April, that's unacceptable. Part of the reason why I'm not a big UBI person, but I think that in this disaster payment, and this is very different from a universal basic income, is that we need to get cash in people's hands immediately. And that is step one. That is only step one. From that point of view, then you can change this is what I've been trying to advocate for, is we need to, phase one of the plan needs to be, look, everybody, 1,000, 2,000, as much as we possibly can get through Congress, pass it. Get it in people's hands now. Then over the next month or two, the end of April, we can start to set up the phased payments based on, number of kids you have, debt, or whatever. We can figure that out. Means test can be figured out based upon need. But the immediacy of this cash, as we talked about, 20% of Americans are now having trouble either finding, or have either been laid off or have reduced hours. I sent you something yesterday. There were 30,000 unemployment claims filed in the state of Connecticut, in the last week. Previously, that number is around 3,000 to 5,000. The state of Pennsylvania was 50,000. It was the same level of a tenfold increase. And if you extrapolate that rate, it's hard because not all the states have been reporting at the same time. That could mean up to 1.8 million have filed for unemployment just in the last week of this country. I mean, that is almost, that's like 0.5% or whatever of the entire country filing for unemployment all at the same time. This is a economic catastrophe that we still don't have our hands wrapped around. But what we have to look at is the trends. The trends right now, Crystal, are that Nancy Pelosi, Kamala Harris, these establishment Democrats, Joe Biden are showing very clearly that they want to actually take the mealy-mouth approach that they took in the financial crisis, and that the Republicans are at least open for now to taking that much bigger path, and that if the things continue that way, the parties are going to significantly realign.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. I mean, that part of the Republican Party is ascendant. And the reality is that the part of the Democratic Party that wants to realign around the working class has been quashed, at least for the moment. All right, we have more for you after this.